I'm excited. Chiquita Brands International used to be known as United Fruit Company. And then before that, something else. Is a company that produces and distributes bananas and other fruits and vegetables and stuff. Company operates under a bunch of other subsidiary brand names, including their main Chiquita brand bananas that everybody knows, Chiquita brand fruit. And
some this morning.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to feel bad about that later.
Oh no.
And Fresh Express salads. Chiquita, leading distributor of bananas in the United States, a bunch of other countries too. And you might be wondering, what does a banana company have to do with our show?
I am wondering.
Well, because they, along with a bunch of other companies, were instrumental in the creation of what we now term a banana republic. There's a pretty dark history behind that. Not only this brand, but a bunch of other fruit companies as well. Chiquita is just the most well-recognized company, and we're doing this for clicks. And actually a while back, almost exactly a year ago, I think it's June of last year, they were found guilty for sponsoring terrorist organizations in Colombia.
The banana company?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So without further ado, I'm going to present you with a contender for the oddest and or funniest intro we've done so far.
Yeah, it's up there.
So, in political science, the term banana republic describes a politically and economically unstable country with an economy that's basically completely dependent on the export of some kind of resource. Usually it's produce, and in this case, bananas and other tropical fruits. As we get further into the story, early into the 1900s, some familiar agencies get involved, namely the CIA. This is Country Roads Creeps.
I have a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Is there any connection to the store Banana Republic? Like the clothing company?
Only in name.
I wonder why they chose that name.
It's an odd one, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get into where that term came from later, but it's just the name.
Odd name for a clothing company?
Yeah, it is.
All right. Well, fair enough.
It's Memorial Day today.
And it's the worst weather for Memorial Day weekend.
Yep.
Well, Saturday was okay. Sunday wasn't bad. But today, actual Memorial Day, it's 50 degrees and raining. Yeah,
it's been raining all day, actually. Did you do anything for Memorial Day?
Yeah.
Or for the weekend, I mean?
Mm-hmm. I went to a family reunion. That was fun. And my baby got dedicated at church.
Good.
So that was really nice, too.
Good. No, I was going to say something about the baby dedication thing is that I think it's weird how religions do it. Not that particular thing is nice and good.
Hannah, you're weird. You and your family are weird.
I think it's weird how different religions do that, or not even different religions, just Christianity as one is like Catholics they do a baptism sort of thing when they're young. And so
do they sprinkle the water?
No, they dunk them into a little, basically like a baby bath kind of thing. It's like a little tub sort of deal.
Sprinkles the water on their head.
Like a big bowl, and they dunk them by their feet and then their head or something.
I don't know about that.
They kind of dunk them a little bit. They just kind of splash them slightly, I think. So I don't know who sprinkled. Maybe the Orthodox sprinkles.
Wait, why do you think this is weird?
I don't think it's weird to do it. It's weird how different ones do it. It's like
weird that it's not all the same.
Yeah.
Across the board. Okay.
Yeah, because I don't know. Because what I always heard growing up is that Catholics, because I grew up in a Baptist church, Southern Baptist, Free Will Baptist kind of deal. And you always hear stuff like Catholics baptize their babies and that's wrong and you shouldn't do it. And it's like, well, you just dedicated them and you basically did the exact same thing. You just used anointing oil or whatever. And I don't even know what that is. You guys just made that up 200 years ago. So if we're talking about the Southern Baptist Convention, that's only 180 years old.
Well,
so
at my church, the preacher asks, do you promise to do this? Do you promise to do this? Do you promise to do this? Basically, do you promise to raise your child to know Jesus and provide them the support they need, and then we pray.
Yeah.
We didn't have oil or water or anything like that.
Yeah,
they gave us flowers, and they gave her a Bible.
Yeah. I'm not saying that the whole thing is weird. Mm-hmm. I think you should do a thing like that.
Like prayed and seen people pray with anointing oil before. I think it's nice.
Yeah, it's just funny how like Protestantism started 500 years ago, and there's 500 different denominations of it that exist, and they all do a different thing, and then you have like 3 different branches of Catholicism that are all like the same, quote unquote, and then like 2 or 3 different branches of Orthodox that are quote unquote the same. So anyway, I went to a wedding.
Yeah, and you and Emma looked so nice.
Yeah, it was a really good wedding.
Loved your outfits.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really nice wedding. The nice place.
Congratulations to the couple.
A really nice place. Yeah, congratulations to them. They look nice too. I like their suit. The groom had a tan jacket. I want a tan jacket now, honestly.
Match your hat?
Yeah. I want a tan jacket. I think a tan jacket is pretty freaking fly, honestly.
Get one.
I was skeptical at first because what Emma told me was they're going to be wearing brown shirts, and what I envisioned in my head was like DNR brown.
Yeah.
And I can't stand a DNR agent. I'm kidding. That's a joke. Shout out DNR guys for reasons. But that's what I envisioned. And I was like, it's kind of a weird brown to choose for a wedding. But they were like a tan. It was nice. They looked really good. Yeah.
Good.
So, but yeah, it was actually a really nice one. And you know what? Another thing about religion, and I'm going to say it, and I don't care if anybody judges me for it. They had like a nice religious ceremony.
Yeah.
And did like a little reading from the Bible. And I think we should do that more often. I think people who are getting married, you should put a little religion in there.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Well, I mean, you're making your vows before God to love that person forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And if you didn't do it with God in mind, then you're not really married, I don't think. So I'm kidding. That's a joke.
I couldn't tell if you meant that or not.
That's a joke. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how to say that more so that people know that I'm kidding, because I like to say stuff sometimes. Anyway, I had a lot of trouble coming up with an episode this week because I was going to do it on the Philadelphia experiment, and I didn't.
I thought you were going to do it on the Oklahoma bombing, and I was listening to a podcast about that earlier in preparation.
Was it a good podcast or was it a propaganda podcast?
No, it was from a woman who survived it. It was good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was sad.
Yeah, it's kind of a sad story, even sadder when you find out who did it. But, yeah, I was going to do the Philadelphia experiment. I'm saving the Oklahoma bombing for a while. It's a big thing.
Maybe for the summer?
Yeah. But, the summer is kind of my busier time, so I don't know. But
maybe this winter.
Yeah, maybe. But I had trouble. I was going to do the Philadelphia experiment, but then when I started researching that, it turns out that's mostly fake. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, the thing I always heard on some of these stories was that Philadelphia experiment was this in Philadelphia port or something. They had a Navy ship. They did some experiment to try to make it invisible. And what they actually did was teleport it. But in teleporting it, they like mangled all of the bodies of the sailors on the ship. And some of them actually got like transfused into the metal of the ship. And they were like stuck there. And like some of them got frozen in time. And some of them were like just dead. And some of them they never found, and it was just weird. And then you find out that like what it actually came from was this dude who was kind of a crazy guy, was writing to like his friends who are also sort of crazy in some book in like footnotes, and they like found some leaked military files that like they didn't really know what they said as far as the technology stuff goes, and then they kind of misinterpreted it, and they just made up the entire story.
Oh.
And so it's not really, it just wouldn't have been a good episode. It would have been me being like, here's a thing that's completely unfounded, and then at the end being like, it's all fake.
Oh, wait, didn't you do an episode like that?
Yeah, but I thought I thought that was more interesting though. Like because Byrd, Admiral Byrd.
Yeah,
Guy. And it was an interesting story about him leading up because he actually did a lot of stuff. It wasn't just some dude making it up. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. And then I was going to talk about Edgar Cayce. I think people call him the sleeping prophet. But it's extremely hard to follow. And like, I got halfway through reading some articles and I was like, it's just not interesting to me at all. He like lost his voice and then would get it back sometimes or something. And then he would go to sleep and he would diagnose people with medical problems, even though he wasn't trained medically at all. And doctors would come see him with patients and be like, what do they have? And he would tell them and then they would.
That's weird.
But none of it is really confirmed at all. And also it's like early 1900s and they're like, they were at a convention and there were 700 doctors. And I'm like, that's every doctor in America. And half of them are just saying that they're a doctor. Like, yeah, they're not. So, and then it's also like, you can't verify anything. It just looks like a lot of stuff was kind of made up. And there were a couple of mysticists that were like following him around that were writing stuff about him and they're kind of making stuff up. And even though he always claimed not to be a mysticist and he was a Christian the whole time and like the whole thing was just kind of weird. So I settled on this Banana Republic thing as my topic because I just thought it was funny.
I respect that.
So anyway.
Tell us something funny.
Okay. In the 20th century, there's a writer named O. Henry. His actual name was William Sidney Porter. He coined the term Banana Republic to describe a fictional republic that he wrote about in a book called Anchuria. In his book, The Cabbages and Kings, that's from 1904. It's a bunch of short stories that were inspired by his experiences in Honduras, a country whose economy was heavily dependent on the export of bananas. He lived there for 6 months until January of 1897, hiding in a hotel room because he was wanted in the United States for embezzlement from a bank. So okay, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But he's the guy who came up with the term Banana Republic because he saw all of this stuff that was going on with fruit companies and countries. So to back up slightly further, there's this guy named Henry Meigs. He was contracted by Costa Rica to build a railroad. And this is at the height of the Industrial Revolution. And a bunch of these countries felt pressure to get industrialized if they wanted to be part of the modern world. And America was already covered by all these railways and pretty much became the starting point for all these inventions. So telephone would come after that and cars and everything. And America was kind of the start of all of these things. And then they had to build infrastructure to house all of these nice inventions. So South and Central American countries were doing anything they could, regardless of if they could afford it or not. And Costa Rica could not afford it. So Henry died and his nephew took over. His nephew's name is Minor C. Keith. He took over, made some deals with Costa Rica. They gave him a 99-year lease to operate the railroad, along with 800,000 acres of land. Ask me how much that is in today acres.
Is it different?
No, it's 800,000. Okay. That was a joke about our money thing. They gave him a 99-year lease to operate the railroad, along with 800,000 acres kind of along the path of where the railway would be. The railroad of a developing country didn't really make that much money, though. Definitely not enough to cover the debt from the money that he borrowed from a bunch of London bankers. But land did, especially if you could grow stuff on it, like bananas. And you could. And so originally he started growing fruit on the land to feed his workers, but realized, hey, you can actually sell these bananas?
Yeah.
And it's really lucrative. And so particularly bananas were this big thing in America. The issue with getting them to the United States was that you had to ship them and sell them really fast because refrigeration wasn't really a thing. It's definitely not commercial refrigeration on ships. So luckily, they just finished building a railroad so they could ship them
on the train
to the coast really fast and then they still had to ship them back to the States. So there's this other company, Boston Fruit Company. They were the main shipper of bananas and other fruit to the United States, but they were growing their bananas on the West Indies. So Minor C. Keith decided to join up with them and ship his fruit. Now, his company was called Tropical Trading and Transportation. They merged with Boston Fruit Company to create United Fruit Company.
Makes sense.
So, and as it turns out, like they actually, like he was really mad that Boston Fruit Company was selling all these bananas in the United States because he wanted to.
But they were doing it first.
They wouldn't let him ship the stuff on the boats, and then it was this whole thing. But instead of like, just giving up, they sold and merged to each other. So Andrew Preston of Boston Fruit Company became the president, Minor Keith, the vice president, and then their lawyer, Bradley Palmer, for Boston Fruit Company became a permanent committee member of the United Fruit Company, as well as being director for a long periods of time. And he seemed to be kind of the face of United Fruit Company for a while. And actually, it was his idea to just, even though they had this huge company shipping bananas, because it's so lucrative, they have all this money, it was his idea to buy shares of the competitors' companies. And for a time, United Fruit Company owned something like 80% of the banana trade to America. Now, it's at this point, I should say, but bananas are this huge, gigantic thing in the United States. Specifically in pretty much everywhere, honestly. But New York, it's been mentioned a lot that they, Boston and New York and New Jersey and these places that have big cities, they really liked this tropical fruit that was coming in. And it became such a problem in New York, not just with the trash stuff. There was a thing I saw where like horse carcasses were laying in the streets of New York City, all this trash, human waste.
They just didn't have like the resources set up to dispose of
They didn't have a trash service back then.
Oh my gosh.
And so they actually...
What years are we in?
This is like late 1800s / early 1900s, very early 1900s.
Yeah.
But spanning like 1870-ish to 1901-ish, 1910-ish area. So, but they didn't have this trash deal, and they actually made it a finable, the police commissioner or whoever made it a finable offense to leave not just banana peels, but any kind of fruit peels on the street that people might slip on. Do you know who that police commissioner was?
You're going to tell me Mario?
No. Why would it be Mario?
Because of banana pills that you make people slip on.
Oh, well, that's pretty good.
Who?
Teddy Roosevelt, the president.
No.
So the thing I put up today that was like, any guesses on why this guy and bananas have in common?
New York City?
He was the police commissioner or whoever in New York City and made it a finable offense because people were leaving banana peels all over the place because they were so popular.
Yeah, and apparently like banana peels do not degrade that quickly.
No, not really.
It's kind of basically litter because they stick around for a while.
Yeah, so...
That's what I've been told.
Yeah, so it this happened in 1896. The president of the Board of Commissioners who ran the New York City Police Department declared war on the banana skin. He just happened to be the future president of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt. So...
Well, that's funny.
Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah. Anyway, so United Fruit's founding, they were valued at $11.23 million. Guess how much that is today?
How much?
Guess.
Okay, say it again.
11.23 million.
50 million.
427,540,805.95.
That was a little off.
A little off, yeah. They're huge. Kept expanding through Central and South America. I even saw something where they created, quote unquote, the Great White Fleet. It's named after the military's Great White Fleet. And they were just these huge ships that were painted white and used to ship bananas. And they would take groups of people, like 100 at a time, to tour the Caribbean. And that was actually the start of this Caribbean cruise culture that we have. So that's kind of...
Wait, for real?
Oh. I think so. I saw a video on it. Saw an article on it, so it must be true. It was on the internet.
Right. Everything on the internet is true.
Yeah, everything I say, especially on this podcast, is true. Except when I lie.
Intentionally spread misinformation.
Yeah. In 1901, the government of Guatemala hired United Fruit Company to manage the country's postal service. And in 1913, the United Fruit Company created the Tropical Radio and Telegraph Company. By 1930, it had absorbed more than 20 competitors of fruit companies.
Really making a monopoly.
They acquired a capital of $215 million. Guess how much that is in today money?
Oh, brother. 900
Wait. 11.23 million was 427 million. Mm-hmm. And then just a few years later, we have 215 million. So do the math. Take a good guess.
700 million.
4 billion. 117,172,000.
Can't do the math.
So they were the biggest employer in Central America. In the early 20th century, there's the United Fruit Company and a few others who, more notably the Cayamel Fruit Company, they were a huge, significant factor in creation of these banana republics, not banana republicans.
Okay.
So banana
Good
republics.
Clarification.
Yeah. There's banana republicans and grapefruit Democrats.
Okay.
I'm kidding. That's totally made up.
I know.
Cayamel was doing most of its business in Honduras. When the president at the time, this is 1910, by the way, President Miguel Davila and got this other fruit company to build a bunch of roads on one side of the country. So they stole a bunch of Cayamel's land to build these roads.
Oh.
That made Cayamel mad, naturally. They were like, hey, what if we just use this massive wealth that we have to our benefit and controlled politics in our favor? That was a very new, never before attempted thing in history. Obvious sarcasm there. That's been done throughout all of history. Your favorite politician, they're controlled by some company that they're being paid off by.
Oh, for sure.
So
literally all of them.
Yeah. I love the meme. I know that this is like one of those memes that is the most true meme I've ever seen, but it almost exclusively gets passed around by like right-wing outlets, which is like they should hang banners in the House of Representatives to show and like make them all wear suits like NASCAR drivers to show like who they're sponsored by.
Yeah.
You'd see a lot of like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Exxon, like on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Anyway,
pretty funny.
They hired a mercenary army with some of their money.
What?
Got Manuel Bonilla, former Honduran president, in on the action, and they overthrew the entire country of Honduras. So Bonilla took power, and they gave a lot of thanks and land and money to Cayamel and United Fruit Company. And then the United States got wind of this, and the U.S. was like, hey, that's a coup, and that's a kind of a dictatorship, and that's not cool. But Bonilla was like, hey, calm down, actually. We're going to make Honduras great again, because business and politics go hand in hand. And we're also going to sell you bananas to the United States because you guys like them. And the United States was like, okay, fine. So
we'll allow it.
Yeah. In the early 1900s, the United States didn't like communism, but they were like, well,
there's a banana.
We don't really want to get involved because not all of our politicians have been bought off by the central banks and lizard people. And so we're just going to let it slide a little bit. And so these fruit companies were thriving. But since the government gave them so many tax breaks, not much of their wealth actually went to making the country any better. And Honduras' debt kept going up and up. So Honduras couldn't actually perform its own basic functions. So the fruit companies decided to step in and basically build the entire country's infrastructure themselves, including roads and railways and telegraph lines and telephone lines and radio towers. They even made an entire shipping industry.
What I was going to say, why did they do that? It wasn't to be nice to help their businesses.
Was not
to have roads to like transport bananas and stuff.
Well, real quick, they also got the country onto the U.S. dollar, but obviously not out of the goodness of their hearts.
Right.
It just benefited them. And their businesses could run more efficiently, but also like did kind of make the country a little bit better. People maybe were slightly happier. They could call their grandma or whatever. But the fruit companies had a monopoly over every public service. And that would be a trend over most of the Central American countries where fruit companies were so rich and powerful. They could either buy off politicians or just install their own politicians by some means, and then build their own infrastructure and have power over pretty much every aspect of business. So I probably don't need to say it, but I will. The fruit companies, having built and controlled their own railways and shipping and stuff, meant that not only do they take priority over their own shipping, but if there was a company that they don't want to compete with, they could easily just ice themselves out of transporting any of their goods on fruit companies' roads and stuff. So
yeah,
it's like
that's why monopolies are bad.
Yeah. So unless you purchase the correct politicians. So they have total control over everything. It seems like maybe this kind of thing would lead to a little bit of a corrupt system where companies get huge tax breaks in exchange for the country getting modernized and infrastructure and stuff. And then the cycle continues, henceforth to be known as banana republics. It's a pretty sweet gig if you're in the top % of people who have direct interest in the fruit companies or the shipping industry. For the other 95% plus of population in these countries, they're working awful conditions on land that's not even theirs for dirt poor wages and no potential benefits whatsoever. So they don't really treat their workers good at all. Pretty terribly, actually.
Imagine that.
They're working 7-day work weeks for like $1.30. I couldn't find anywhere if that was like $1 a day or $1 per week. Still not good. And not even real money. It was company vouchers, kind of like Coal Script.
I was going to say like Script.
Yeah, you could only use it at the company stores.
That's terrible.
And injuries happen all the time. And when you were off work for injuries, you weren't paid for the time that you had off. And if you got sick, there were no health places for you to go if you got sick. And if you left to go find help, then they considered that abandonment and someone else would come take your job.
Oh my gosh.
So at some point over the next 20-ish years, Cayamel was bought out by United Fruit Company. But their president, or the owner, CEO guy, Samuel Zamuri, who is the president of Cayamel, somehow became the CEO / president of that whole thing for a time. And then
United?
Yeah. And then Vaccaro was renamed to Standard Fruit Company. I haven't mentioned very many companies because this keeps happening where they get bought out and then, or they change names or something. And it gets confusing. But the Samuel Zamuri guy, I saw 2 different places or 3 different places where they said he became the CEO for a little bit of United Fruit Company. But then I also saw a thing, I'm not sure how long that was, but there's a couple other sources that said he just retired from the industry. Do you want to guess? His name is Samuel. Do you want to guess what his nickname was?
Sam.
Yes, but...
Sammy.
No, Sam, and then 3 other words.
Sam the Banana Man.
That's exactly right.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. But I saw some things that said that Sam the Banana Man became either CEO and president of this whole organization for a little bit, or some that just said he retired completely after Cayamel was bought. I don't know. So...
it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, his name is the more important part of that.
Sam the Banana Man.
Yeah. In addition to other... so let me skip past this for a quick second. They didn't have good working conditions. There were riots and labor strikes and stuff. So in addition to all of these labor strikes and things, there were 2 big ones in South and Central America. One of them was in Colombia in 1928. That was the Great Banana Strike. Sorry. Costa Rica had the Great Banana Strike. Colombia had another one that wasn't named. But the Great Banana Strike in Costa Rica was this one that would lead to the formation of trade unions in Costa Rica. And since companies were required to sign a collective agreement with its workers, they weren't very happy about that. So they kept fighting back and forth, and they would kill people, and then they would get killed, and then they would kill people, and then people would get killed.
That's not good.
So labor laws in most banana republics started to tighten down in the 1930s. United Fruit Company thought that they were being specifically targeted by the reforms, probably because they had the worst working conditions and they were just the biggest and they owned everybody. And they usually refused to negotiate with strikers, even though that they were pretty frequently in violation of new laws. And it didn't matter at the time because, like I said, they own all of the postal services and the railways and the shipping lanes and the telephone lines and everything else and the radio towers. So it's kind of like they're making propaganda at the time. And then if they don't like the new laws that happen, they're trying to actively overthrow governments to get laws, get politicians in that are sympathetic to fruit companies or at least able to be paid off by fruit companies. And they won't bother them. So to a certain extent, it's like, we don't really care what your laws say because we're too rich and powerful for you. But also, like, we'll just turn your telephones off. So
yeah. So take that.
Yeah. So in 1944, Guatemala had a democratic revolution. We love to see it. New leader, Juan Jose Arevalo, didn't like how his people were being treated by fruit companies. So he implemented a minimum wage and universal suffrage, which I kind of thought they were suffering enough already.
Oh my gosh, Shane.
Do you want me to deliver the next part of that joke, or do you want me to just read exactly what I wrote in my notes? Because I think it's slightly funnier than the joke.
I don't know.
I put he implemented minimum wage and universal suffrage, which I thought they were suffering enough already. Ha ha. JK, that's voting.
That was also one of our vocabulary words in 3rd grade this year.
Suffrage? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Never should have happened. Just kidding.
Well, and then that was the day the podcast ended. Anna and Shane were no longer friends.
This helped out the people. But the United Fruit Company, big mad. In 1952, they, Guatemala, started giving land that was unused by the fruit company back to the citizens. And that didn't make the relationship with the United Fruit Company any better. So in 1953, a new president was elected, Jacobo Arbenz, and he continued the reforms. And the United Fruit Company was even madder. So they went to the United States for help. And they told Eisenhower, who hated dirty rat communists, that this new president was a dirty rat communist. He was making them pay minimum wage. Which honestly, not the worst thing, but he's also taken their land, which they weren't using, and giving it back to the people, which sounds an awful lot like a dirty rat commie thing to do. And Eisenhower hates a dirty rat commie. So the United States went and killed a bunch of people and installed their own dictatorship, because a dirty rat commie isn't really a dirty rat commie if it's a United States controlled dirty rat commie.
Say that one more time.
The whole thing?
No. Dirty rat commie.
Dirty rat
heard
commie.
It enough.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
The United States didn't actually kill people. They just found a guy named Armas who was an exile for trying to overthrow the Guatemalan government already. And he was sympathetic to the United States, which is good enough for the CIA to hire him and his men to go fight the current government.
Good grief.
The first thing Armas did when he became dictator was he executed everyone, like 5,000 people, 1,000 of which were people who spoke out or protested against the United Fruit Company. And the CIA and USA installed dictator after dictator up until 1996. These coups and conflicts, not just in Guatemala, but all over the place, not just United Fruit Company, but other fruit companies, resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths. And actually, in 1999, Bill Clinton apologized to Guatemala specifically for the 1952-1953 coup. And the government of Guatemala apologized in 2011 to the Arbenz family for the smear campaign and the propaganda that they did. So,
a little too late.
Yeah, a little bit. Just in the nick of time. Again, this happened in a bunch of countries. A bunch of these were banana republic countries at different points in time, fueled by, the Red Fear in the United States during 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And the United States' love for setting up coups and dictatorships as long as they do what the United States wants. So, and by the way, this isn't like me being like, the CIA did a coup. They declassified it. So
they
it's
admitted
just true.
To it.
Yeah. And this
said,
is
yeah, we did that.
Yet another thing on the podcast where the CIA says, yeah, we did that. What are you going to do about it? and you can't do anything.
Nothing.
I still have to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about it and move on, I guess.
Anyway, this dude in 1970 named Eli Black bought 733,000 shares of United Fruit Company in 1968. In 1970, he merged with his own former company, I guess, is a meat packing company, I guess, is AMK, and they became United Brands Company. But United Fruit had a lot less cash floating around than he thought, so that's not good. And he also kind of mismanaged a bunch of companies, so they were crippled with debt. United Brands was, now that they're also merged with these other food companies. So also from the Banana Republic problem, which is a term I've just coined, Americans love bananas, but bananas come in a million different varieties, and that's not really good for business. Americans wanted the nice yellow banana, kind of like the one that you would think of today when I tell you the word banana. But United Fruit Company did everything they could to make them exactly the same, so they would fit in their boxes, and all the bananas that Americans saw would be exactly the same, and it was the one that they wanted to buy. So they made bananas so alike that they stopped being resilient to diseases. And then in the 1950s, Panama disease swept through a ton of plantations. So banana companies spent millions to market this new nice yellow banana to everybody, and now it's kind of crumbling down. Mm-hmm. And they found one that everybody wants, and they've marketed it, spent millions, put it in movies and TV. They put it in cereal commercials. It was in government propaganda. And now the banana has to be different. And so now the one that we know, the long yellow, bright yellow thing, was born. And it was similar enough and tasted good enough that they could pass on it. But you still had to spend millions to bring a new banana to market. And so it was this whole problem. And they were hemorrhaging money running new bananas and marketing them and running infrastructure and the economies of all these South and Central American nations. And so the losses were exacerbated by a hurricane in 1974 that destroyed a bunch of banana plantations in Honduras. And in 1975, that Eli Black guy, he was like, can't take it. He jumped out of the 44th floor of the Pan Am building in New York City. And later that year, the United States Securities and Exchange Commission exposed a scheme by Eli Black and United Brands. They called it Bananagate.
Did they really?
He sent a $1.25 million bribe to Honduran President Oswaldo Lopez and promised another $1.25 million on the reduction of certain export taxes. And trading in the United Brand stock was halted. So you couldn't do that anymore. And Lopez, the president of Honduras, was ousted in a military coup. Not the first time that's happened in history. Anyway, after Eli Black jumped out of the window, Cincinnati-based financial group Carl Linder, one of his companies, bought into United Brands. And in 1984, Linder took control of the company and renamed it Chiquita Brands International. And the headquarters was moved to Cincinnati. And then in 2019, they relocated to Switzerland. Vaccaro, remember that name? That was renamed to Standard Fruit. Mm-hmm. Guess who they are now?
Chiquita?
No. Another
competitor?
Yeah, another person you know. Dole, yep.
I still say it's the only other one I know.
Yeah. All these companies had bad history. Chiquita is just the one that we kind of follow because they're sort of
well known.
Yeah, they're well known, and they kind of seem like they're the worst. And they also are the only ones who have been found guilty so far. And now that Dole is renamed Dole, and now that Chiquita has moved to Switzerland, they're all nice and pleasant, and everything is fine, right?
Wrong.
1990 Banana Wars. Not so much wars per se, or maybe sometimes a little bit. Chiquita had a competitor named Fifes who was doing better than they were. What are you looking for?
I dropped my fidget and I can't find it.
Oh my gosh.
Is our machine still recording?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Oh my gosh. Are you sure it's not that right there? Made you look. Huh.
It's fine. I have a backup one. Continue.
Chiquita had a competitor named Fifes who was doing better than they were, and they can't have that. So owning all of the infrastructure, they seized Fife's bananas for inspection and let them go rotten, and then they would just throw them out.
Oh.
To the tune of like $10 million over the time that they were doing this. And Fife's CEO / manager guy actually claimed that Chiquita was they put out like an arrest warrant for him, and they were going to, he claimed that the quote unquote arrest warrant, which unclear if that was real or not, they were going to kidnap and murder him, which honestly, like, maybe, because he's a competitor and they've participated in political assassinations before. So what's killing another CEO of a company that nobody cares about? So,
well, that's pretty crazy.
In 1998, Michael Gallagher from Cincinnati Enquirer wrote an article called Chiquita, Secrets Revealed, alleging that Chiquita was involved in drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, coups, as well as political assassinations. But the article was discredited because they found out that Michael Gallagher had broken into Chiquita Brand's answering machine to get a lot of his information. He was accused of taking things out of context and just in general being unprofessional. And Chiquita sued the Cincinnati Enquirer, winning about $10 million. Now,
dang.
Cincinnati Enquirer, they printed a retraction, and all the details of the original are considered untrue and dishonestly gained information, which might be true, but I don't know how you take out of context weapons and drug trafficking and political assassinations.
In relation to a banana company.
So, yeah. And so a lot of people still consider the facts of the article to be true, which honestly fair.
Yeah.
Like, I understand, like, you can't break the law to get information in a thing, but also it's like, if their answering machine has people talking about like killing presidents and stuff, then
it's a big deal.
Yeah, they might want to be investigated about that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you would think.
The United Fruit Company, which now at the time is Chiquita, and Fifes hated each other so much that they decided to merge in 2014, but that ended up falling through.
They hated each other so much they decided to merge.
Yeah. If you can't beat them, join them.
I guess.
And that pretty much brings us to modern day, but I want to talk about the funding terrorist organizations court case that I mentioned at the very beginning. Almost exactly a year ago, the BBC published an article called Banana Giant Held Liable for Funding Paramilitaries. There's a court in the United States that found multinational fruit company Chiquita Brands International liable for financing a Colombian paramilitary group. That group, the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, or AUC, was designated by the United States as a terrorist organization in, I think it was 2001. And Chiquita had funded them to the tune of, it's in this article somewhere, $1.7 million from the years 1997 to 2004. So at least half of the money that they were funding them was after they were designated a terrorist organization in 2001.
Why were they doing that?
Because, have you not been listening to the episode the entire time? They love overthrowing governments so that they could get laxer laws on treating their workers bad and sell more bananas. Yeah.
Okay.
They love it.
That's just crazy.
So, and they said that the leader of the AUC at the time, Carlos Castaño, implied that staff and property and other people associated with Chiquita Brands in Colombia would be harmed if they didn't send money. So they said, we have to send money. What if we don't? We're going to lose people.
Like a ransom.
But also the AUC was responsible for like killing people and beheading people and all this stuff. There's actually one particular massacre it was either the late 90s or the early 2000s where they showed up to this place and I can't remember the name of the place, but they basically beheaded people, disemboweled people, cut people's arms and legs off, and then threw everybody in a river.
Oh my
and so they actually couldn't figure out how many people were killed in that massacre, but they think it was about 30-ish, something like that. So that's a really, really cool group to be sending money to. Anyway, they were found guilty of doing that. And there's actually another court case that started the 15th of July of last year, but I couldn't really find anything on that. So I don't know if it's still like going on or if that was, they were also found guilty in that. I saw some other stuff that they were found liable for damages on something. But anyway, they were ordered to pay $38.3 million in damages to the families of the people that were harmed because they were funding the AUC.
Yeah. Do you think they did, or do you think they got found a way out of it?
Well, they were ordered to pay it. So once you have a judgment, then it was a federal court that did it. So, yeah. I mean, once you have a judgment like that, you can't really like appeal it necessarily. Or I guess you can appeal it, but there's not like it's going anywhere. So, Colombia has a long history of coups, assassinations, and paramilitary conflicts too. It's really long to kind of get into in this episode and kind of outside the scope of our show, but it's just true. Like, yeah, Chiquita funded terrorist organization.
That's crazy.
And also the Teddy Roosevelt thing, and also the do you know the banana flavor thing? About banana
artificial banana flavor. Mm-hmm. That's like what bananas used to taste like. Mm-hmm. Like banana candy is what bananas used to taste like.
It's a myth.
Is it?
No, not really. Everybody has the article on there that like the original banana flavor, artificial banana flavor, is based on the original bananas that Americans loved, and that's a myth. And what it actually is, they tried to make an artificial flavoring based on that flavor. So that kind of palate was in mind, but it doesn't taste exactly like it. And so it's like, no, it's based on that. It's like
grape candy doesn't taste exactly like grapes. It's kind of based off of it.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm not sure if I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, well, grapes don't have we don't use a completely different strain of grape now, I don't guess. Mm. What it means like different bananas taste differently. Mm-hmm. The artificial flavor, what everybody says is artificial banana flavor is what it used to taste like. Mm-hmm. It's a Gros Michel banana is the strain. They say that it's actually not what those taste like. It's just they based that flavor off of what that was. And so they had that palate in mind, I guess.
Okay.
But also they use it for clicks because they're like, it's not, but it's based on it. It's whatever.
You kind of were talking about this earlier of how they had to, sell the new banana that we have today. But I've also, kind of read in the past that all the bananas we have now are a clone of one banana. Is that true?
I don't know. Bananas
are
cloned.
One banana.
Here's my guess before I read anything on this is that the way that they mentioned before, the Gros Michel banana, Gros Michael banana or whatever, however you pronounce that, they made it so similar to one plant. So in plants, they can get sick. And if you grow plants in like a garden or something, and they are genetically diverse enough, then if one plant gets sick, it might not necessarily transfer to the next plant. But if they're too genetically similar, then it will. And they made the banana plants so similar to one another that it didn't have any genetic resilience
to
what Panama disease was. And so when Panama disease hit, it swept through a ton of plantations and it just killed all these banana plants. Mm-hmm. So they had to come up with one that was different to the one that we have now. And now the one that we have now, the Cavendish banana, is just genetically predisposed to be more resilient to Panama disease. And so they can make them all similar enough to be like, you don't go to the banana store or the grocery store. I mean, never mind.
The bananas.
Cut that out, me. You don't go to the store to get bananas, and like 1 week the bananas taste really, really sweet, and then the next week the bananas are kind of blah, and then the next week they're really short, and then the next week they're really long. They always look exactly the same.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what my thinking is, that maybe they're not clones, but they are. They come from the same like father plant or mother plant or whatever, and they make them all genetically similar enough that they always sell the exact same product all the time.
What does Google tell you?
Says, yes, it's true that commercially available bananas are essentially clones of each other, meaning they are genetically identical. And that's because they are propagated by cuttings or tissue culture rather than through seeds. So yeah, they just made them. Yep. They plant them from each other and make them genetically similar enough that they're always going to be exactly the same.
Identical.
Yeah. Yeah, identical is the word that they use, yeah. So,
okay, that answers.
But bananas, they're supposed to, the seed at the end of the banana, they're supposed to be like all the way through the banana.
It's at the end?
Yeah, at the end.
I thought it was all the way. I thought they were all the way through.
The big one at the end, the brown part at the end. You know what I'm talking about?
That's a seed?
I think that is a seed. I could be completely wrong on that. I think that's a seed.
I thought it was just like a stem.
You see those little teeny tiny seed things all the way through them?
Uh-huh.
They're supposed to be big like this. These are all like this picture here is a banana seeds.
Yeah.
That doesn't have big ones like that. They have the little teeny tinies.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they have like this part. They have like...
That at the end of it is a seed?
I think it maybe could be a seed. If
it is, I never knew that. I thought it was just like a stem type of...
I don't know. I'm completely wrong probably.
No, you might be right. I just have no idea. I've never heard that.
Banana seed at the end.
I've never heard that. I'm not saying you're wrong.
It's not a seed, but the flower from which your banana berry grew. It's the flower part.
I didn't think it was a seed.
Which honestly, what is a seed but the part that your fruit grows from? I'm going to be cantankerous on that point, honestly.
Well, not necessarily the fruit. The fruit is a specific part of a plant.
Yeah.
The plant grows from the seed, but the fruit is a specific part of the plant.
Yeah, but the part at the end is the flower, it says. Yeah. That it grows off of, yeah. So
who cares?
So I'm wrong.
Who cares?
But my point is, the thing at the end is not. They were bred to be like that and not have seeds all the way through.
Yeah.
They have the little teeny tiny little spots where seeds are supposed to be.
You don't even notice them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is kind of like you ever ate a pawpaw before? We have pawpaws in West Virginia.
I had it for the first time a year or two ago. My cousin found a pawpaw tree and brought some in.
Me and Emma went hiking somewhere and saw pawpaws on the ground, and they were still very green. Mm-hmm. I looked it up, and they're supposed to turn like a kind of yellowish, like a banana. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, here in a couple of weeks, did all this research on pawpaws. In a couple of weeks, we could go back and pick them, and they would be fresh and ripe.
Yeah.
And I broke one open, and it has seeds all the way through it like a banana, but they're not bananas. They're not related to bananas at all.
Considered, maybe look this up. I don't want to be telling people wrong. I think they're considered a citrus fruit maybe, and it's like West Virginia's only citrus.
I
double check that.
I think that's wrong. I think they're related to citrus maybe.
They're West Virginia's only something, whatever category they fall in. There's something special.
A small deciduous tree native to the eastern United States and southern Ontario, producing large yellowish green to brown fruit. What is it? It's a sweet custard-like texture and flavor somewhat similar to banana, mango, and pineapple, commonly eaten raw. Just tell me what it is. Scientific name. Family, custard apples.
Type in, is a pawpaw fruit a citrus fruit?
The flavor is, compared to bananas, the fruit has ungainly appearance of a small green potato, may occur in clusters on a tree. What? This doesn't tell me anything. Oh my gosh. National Park Service. Oh my gosh. What is this? Our Pawpaw's citrus. The only citrus fruit that grows in the mountains.
I was right. If you go back and get some, I would love to have one.
Yeah, I found a source.
I would love to have one.
I found a Pawpaw plug. So, yeah.
Be a few dollars.
I want to, I was going to take a backpack full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to have one, please.
I saw these people when we were there, they were still really green, and these people were like taking a bunch of them. And I was like, they're not even ripe yet, you dummies.
Yeah, they're not good.
And they, and I guess you could put them on a counter, kind of like bananas, and they would be fine. And they would ripen up or whatever, but still, I'm like, I'm going to go back and get them.
Go get some, please.
I'm going to take a backpack full. And this is, by the way, not a state or national park, by the way, just for the record.
Good clarification.
Yeah.
You're not committing a crime.
You're not supposed to take stuff from a national park or a state park, I don't think.
And you won't be.
Of course, maybe they wouldn't care, honestly. I think if you took a couple, I don't think they would care.
I don't think you're supposed to do that.
I don't think you're supposed to, but I don't think anybody would care that much. So.
Probably if you took a backpack full.
I'm going to, but not out of a state or national park. Mm-hmm. So, for the record.
It's not like someone's backyard.
I don't care if it's somebody's backyard. It's not a crime to take them out of the backyard, is it?
Yeah.
Take them out of a national park.
It's on their personal property.
Only
that's a crime.
if you get caught.
That's a crime.
Only if you're slower on the draw than they are, which I'm not, I promise.
Cut that out.
No, I'm not cutting that out. I want people to know, stand on business.
Cut that out.
Standing on business. My pawpaws.
All right, we're going to have to wrap this up. You're saying crazy stuff.
Yeah. It's getting late. It's 9:00. Yeah. Not to dox us or anything.
With our time zone.
Anything else?
Next episode is our 50th.
Yes.
Don't know what I'm talking about yet.
What are you going to do?
I want to talk about Faye, but I want to wait until school's over so I can
do a deep dive.
More time on that, which we still have 3 weeks of school left. So I'm going to need something else in between. So I don't know, but it needs to be something good for the 50th episode, something special.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say we should do something for our annual. How do you say when it's a year?
Annual.
Yeah.
N-U-A-L.
Yeah, but annual is not annual means it's recurring. This is like the first, I think it's annal, like A-N-N-A-L. I believe that's a word. I have Google right in front of me. Watch me prove you so wrong or myself so wrong.
This is not our first year.
It's not our first year, but it's the 52nd. The word annal, A-N-N-A-L, is pronounced as annal and is often most purely often used in its plural form annals to refer to a record or chronicle of events usually arranged in chronological order by year. Annals can also refer to published reports of a specific organization or discipline.
Okay, so what are you trying to say?
So, I'm saying that it's the 52nd episode, so that would be there's 52 weeks in a year.
No. Next is the 50th.
I know that, but on the 52nd, it'll be a year's worth of episodes if you listen to one every week.
Okay.
And so that'll be our annual episode.
I mean, I guess. We don't put them out weekly, but...
I know that, but I'm just making a point of 52 cards in the deck, 52...
In a year?
Yeah.
Okay.
52 weeks in a year, 52 years in my lifetime.
Hopefully more than that.
Probably be done.
That's sad. Just gonna throw in the towel at 50.
Probably be finished. Just wither away.
Oh, don't say that.
What if I turned 52 and then just started like Thanos
evaporating?
And you were like, wow, he was right. Yeah, he was right the whole time. Well, I thought we would do something good for the 52nd.
Okay.
It'd be like a year. And I think it's going to come out on our actual 2-year anniversary of episodes.
Okay, well, something special for the 50th and the 52nd.
Because our first episode we recorded or put out, I can't remember which one. I think it was recorded on my birthday.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so something special for 50th, something very mediocre for 51st, and then something special for 52nd. Yeah, she's about to wake up. So.
We should do a joint episode. We'll talk about it
for the 52nd.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, that's about Banana Republics, and I hope you loved it, and I hope it was creepy enough for you.
I did. Thank you. It was creepy.
And I hope that I hope that you have a good week, and I hope that you wear your seatbelts so you're safe on the drive home. And watch out for the knot deer.
Bye.
Bye.